There is a certain type of person who never asks for your approval. Not because they are arrogant, not because they are broken, but because somewhere along the way, they made a decision so quiet, so irreversible, that most people never even notice it happened. They decided to stop needing you. Sosuke Aizen is not the most powerful character in Bleach because of his Ryatsu. He is the most powerful character in Bleach because of what he refused to want. And that distinction will change how you see every person in your life, including yourself. Think about the last time you posted something and waited. Waited for someone to respond, to react, to confirm that what you did was worth doing, that you were worth something. Most people live their entire lives inside that wait. They dress for it. They speak for it. They make decisions, change careers, abandon dreams, stay in relationships they hate, all for the invisible approval of people who are not even paying attention. Psychologists call this external validation dependency. But you do not need a clinical term to recognize it. You feel it every time your mood is determined by someone else's reaction to you. Here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It is not a character flaw. It is a survival mechanism. The human brain is wired for social acceptance because, for most of our evolutionary history, being rejected by the group meant death. But you are not on a savanna anymore, and the mechanisms that once kept you alive are now keeping you small. Aizen understood something about people that most of us spend decades refusing to accept. He understood that the need for validation is not just a weakness, it is a leash. And the people who hold that leash do not even know they are holding it. Watch him in the early arcs, not his power, his posture. There is no urgency in him, no hunger for recognition. He does not need the other captains to respect him, because his sense of himself does not depend on their perception of him. This is what makes him terrifying, not his Zanpakuto, not Kyoka Suigetsu. The fact that he cannot be emotionally controlled. Think about every manipulation tactic ever used on you. Every time someone withdrew affection to punish you. Every time someone compared you unfavorably to someone else. Every time silence was used as a weapon. All of those tactics only work on one condition. The target has to care what you think. Aizen eliminated that condition entirely. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the version of this idea that gets sold online is toxic. The hollow performance of not caring, the practiced coldness, the aggressive indifference that is, ironically, just another way of performing for an audience. Real emotional independence does not look like that. It is quieter, more internal, almost invisible. The person who has genuinely stopped needing external validation does not broadcast it. They do not perform detachment to prove they are detached. They simply move. They decide. They act. And the reaction of others is information, not judgment. There is a difference between not caring what people think and not registering what people think. Aizen registered everything. He observed, calculated, and filed away every piece of social data around him. He simply refused to let that data determine his worth. That is not coldness. That is clarity. Johann Liebert, Lelouch vi Britannia, Madara Uchiha, Light Yagami. Every one of these characters is remembered not just for their intelligence, but for the particular quality of their stillness. There is a scene in Monster that I want you to think about. Johann walks into a room and says almost nothing. He does not demand attention. He does not perform intelligence. He is simply so entirely himself that everyone else in the room reorganizes around him. That is not dominance in the traditional sense. It is something older. Something that operates before language and status signals and social games. It is the presence of someone who has already decided who they are. Most people have never made that decision. They are still waiting for enough external evidence to conclude that they deserve to take up space. Aizen made that decision so long ago that by the time we meet him, the question does not even exist for him anymore. And this is where the real psychological insight lives. Because the cost of needing validation is not just emotional, it is cognitive. Every time you reshape a thought before saying it because you are afraid of the response, that is processing power you are not using for anything else. Every time you rehearse a conversation because you need it to go a certain way, that is mental energy bleeding out. Every time you change your behavior to manage someone's perception of you, you are operating a second identity on top of your real one. The people around you who seem effortlessly sharp, effortlessly confident, they are not more intelligent than you. They are simply not running that second identity. Their cognitive resources are not divided. They are entirely present, entirely themselves, entirely free to think. This is what silence actually means in powerful people. It is not mystique. It is not strategy, though it can function as one. It is the absence of internal noise. When Aizen speaks, every word lands with weight. Not because he chose dramatic words, because he is not spending energy managing your reaction to him. He is simply saying what is true. Here is a question that will stay with you after this video ends. How many of your beliefs are actually yours? Not the ones you chose after thinking, the deep ones, the ones that determine whether you feel worthy on a Tuesday afternoon when no one is watching. The ones that decide whether a stranger's disapproval can ruin your entire day. Where did those come from? For most people, those beliefs were installed in childhood, by parents, teachers, peers, systems that had their own needs and projected them inward. And because those beliefs arrived before you had the language to question them, they feel like facts instead of assumptions. Aizen's power is not that he was born without those beliefs. Nobody is. His power is that at some point he examined them, and then he let go. Not in the dramatic way, not in the way of a man burning his past to the ground, in the quiet way of someone who simply stops giving weight to something that no longer deserves it. You will meet people in your life who are deeply threatened by your lack of need for them. This is important to understand. When you stop performing for someone, when you stop adjusting yourself to manage their comfort, it does not feel like freedom to them. It feels like a threat. Because your independence makes their need visible. Your self-containment is a mirror they did not ask to stand in front of. The people who call you cold when you are simply calm. The people who call you arrogant when you simply no longer seek their approval. The people who become aggressive when you stop being controllable. Aizen understood this, and he never apologized for it. Not because he was cruel, but because he recognized that your apology for being whole is not kindness. It is a betrayal of yourself disguised as consideration for others. There is one final thing about Aizen that almost no one talks about. He was not always like this. There are glimpses, small, almost forgettable moments, where you see a different version of him. Younger, more open, more human. And you realize that what you are watching is not someone who is born into power. It is someone who chose it, incrementally, deliberately, over a long period of time, through a series of private decisions that no one else witnessed. That is the part the internet version of this idea always misses. The work that happens in the dark. The years of internal reconstruction before the result becomes visible to anyone else. The version of yourself that does not need anyone's approval is not a persona you put on. It is a person you become, slowly, quietly, without announcement. Most people will spend their entire lives waiting for permission to be who they already are. They will wait for the right relationship, the right success, the right external confirmation that they are allowed to take themselves seriously. Aizen never waited. Not because he was special, but because he understood something that is almost impossible to fully absorb until you have lived it yourself. Nobody is coming to give you permission. The validation you are waiting for will not arrive. And if it does, it will not fix the thing you think it will fix. Because the wound that needs external approval is not healed by external approval. It is healed by the slow, unglamorous decision to stop needing it. That decision does not happen once. It happens every day. In the moment you post something without checking back obsessively. In the moment you speak your actual opinion instead of the acceptable one. In the moment you walk away from a conversation and feel nothing waiting to be resolved. Each of those moments is a small Aizen, a small version of the decision. And one day, so far in the future you cannot see it from here. Those moments will accumulate into something that looks, from the outside, like effortless power. But you will know the truth. It was never effortless. It was just quiet.